Um, the story you have been telling yourself is about to change, not because it was wrong, because it was incomplete, because the version of events that you have been carrying, the one constructed from the information that was available to you at the time, and from the particular angle from which you were positioned to see what you could see, was the most accurate version available from inside your position. But not the complete version. The complete version has a piece that your position did not give you access to. And when that piece arrives, the story does not simply have more content, it reorganizes. The meaning of things you already knew shifts when placed in the context of things you did not know. The interpretation of certain moments changes. The understanding of certain choices, certain behaviors, certain patterns that you experienced from the outside without access to the interior that produced them becomes more accurate. And more accurate, when it arrives about something that mattered, changes everything. I want to begin with the realization piece because the title names it, and it has a specific quality that deserves examination before we go anywhere else. The realization is not coming from you, not in the sense of something you have been thinking your way toward, not a conclusion you arrive at through the continued processing of what you already have. The realization is incoming, is arriving from outside your current knowledge base, is the specific external source, quality of information, or perspective, or confession, or simple truth that has been existing somewhere outside of your awareness and that is about to enter your awareness. Someone knows something, or has understood something, or has arrived through their own process at a clarity about what happened that is different from the clarity they were operating from when it was happening, that has a different quality, a more complete quality, a more honest quality. And that clarity is going to reach you. Let me describe the quality of what has been missing from your understanding, because the something you don't know yet has a shape, even if it does not yet have full content. It is the interior of the other person during the events. That is the piece that is always missing from one person's account of a shared experience. The specific, private, only accessible through telling quality of what was happening inside the other person, while what was happening on the outside was what you were experiencing, what they were feeling, what they were thinking, what was driving them that was not visible in the behavior was producing. Behavior is visible, interior is not. And the understanding of a shared experience that is constructed entirely from the visible behavior of one person, observed from the position of another person, is inevitably incomplete. Not through anyone's failure, through the simple structural reality that the interior is not visible unless it is shared. The interior was not shared in the moment. It is going to be shared now. And the sharing of it is going to produce the realization. And I want to speak to what the interior contains, the specific quality of what was happening inside this person during the events that you understood differently from the outside, more than you knew. This is the consistent quality of what I am reading, not simply a different version of what you saw, a more than, a fuller, richer, more complex interior than the behavior reflected. where what the exterior was showing was a managed, partial, sometimes deliberately constrained version of a much larger interior reality. The managing had reasons. Not all of them were bad reasons. Some of the managing was the specific human quality of someone who could not yet find the form for what they were experiencing, who did not yet have the words, who was in the middle of something they were still making sense of, and who could not therefore share what they had not yet organized into a shareable form. Some of the managing was fear, the specific quality of someone who was experiencing something they were not ready to fully own, whose feelings were arriving at a scale or a direction or a quality that exceeded what their available self understanding could comfortably accommodate, who managed the exterior partly as a way of managing the interior, of keeping what was happening at a distance that made it possible to continue functioning. What they could not show you in the moment was the size of what they were feeling. I want to name that size specifically because I think it is the most significant piece of what the realization is going to deliver. It was larger than the behavior suggested, not by a small margin, in the specific, notably different from what the exterior communicated way of something that was substantially present in their interior while being substantially absent from their exterior, where the gap between what was felt and what was expressed was wide enough that you could be forgiven for having concluded from the available evidence that there was considerably less there than there actually was. There was considerably more. The realization delivers the more. I want to speak to how this reaches you, because the realization does not simply arrive from nowhere, and the how of its arrival is relevant to how you receive it. Someone is going to say something, or something is going to surface through whatever the specific mechanism is in your particular situation, whether it is a direct communication from the person themselves or information that reaches you through a third party, or something that you encounter in the ordinary course of your life that illuminates what was previously in shadow. Whatever the mechanism, the effect is the same. Something that was dark becomes lit, and in the light, the specific, slightly vertiginous quality of seeing something you have been looking at from a particular angle, suddenly from a different angle, of understanding that the story had more in it than the version you have been carrying, that the version you have been carrying, while the best version available to you at the time, was missing something that changes how the whole thing reads. I want to describe the specific quality of that moment of illumination, because I think naming it will help you recognize it as what it is when it arrives, rather than needing time to process before understanding what has just happened. It feels like a click. The specific internal, almost audible quality of something fitting into place, of a picture that was slightly blurry, suddenly being in focus, not a violent shift, a resolution, the specific clean quality of something that was approximate becoming precise. In that moment, you will understand something you have been understanding imprecisely, and the precision will be the realization. Let me speak to the changes everything quality, because it is the most significant phrase in this reading and it deserves its full examination. Changes everything is not hyperbole. It is the specific, accurate description of what happens when the foundational understanding of a significant experience is revised. When the story you have been using to make sense of something, to organize your feelings about it, to draw conclusions from it that have been informing subsequent choices and subsequent positions and the specific ongoing navigation of your life in relation to this experience, turns out to have been built on an incomplete foundation. The revision of the foundation changes the structure. Not all of it, not necessarily the decisions you made or the direction you moved or any of the concrete, irreversible qualities of what the original understanding produced, but the meaning, the emotional relationship to what happened, the specific interior account of what the experience was and what it says and what it means for how you understand certain things about yourself and about the person you experienced it with. That changes when the missing piece arrives. Tell me in the comments if you have been sensing something, if there has been a quality in the current period of your life of something approaching, of a piece of information or a conversation or a clarity about a past experience that feels like it is circling the edges of your awareness without having fully arrived. Whether this reading is naming something that has been present in your intuition already, tell me. Yeah. I want to speak to what the realization produces, not just the initial landing of it, the longer effect, because changes everything means the effect is not limited to a single moment of new understanding, but extends into the ongoing quality of how things are organized. The first thing it produces is relief, not the relief of having something good happen, the specific, quiet, slightly unexpected relief of a question being answered, of a piece that was missing being found, of the specific, low grade, not always conscious energy cost of carrying an incomplete understanding of something significant being released when the understanding becomes more complete. You may not have known that you were carrying that cost. The cost of the incomplete understanding tends to be invisible while it is being paid, becomes visible only when it stops. When the specific, subtle allocation of interior resource to the holding of something unresolved is released, and you notice its absence in the form of a specific, slightly lighter quality of something having settled. That is the first thing. The settling, that is the first thing. The settling, I want to describe what the settling actually looks and feels like, because it is subtle enough that it deserves naming, so you can recognize it when it arrives. It feels like a breath you did not know you were holding being released. The specific, slightly surprising quality of something relaxing in you that you had not registered as tense. A quality of ease in relation to this particular thing, this particular person, this particular chapter that was not available before the fuller understanding arrived, not a dramatic release. The quiet bodily quality of something that was slightly contracted becoming uncontracted, of a background tension that was so consistent it had become invisible, suddenly becoming visible through its absence. And in that absence, a new quality of space, interior space that was being held by the incomplete understanding, now available for other things. For the current chapter, for what is actually in front of you, for the life that is genuinely happening now rather than the portion of its resource that was being allocated to the still unresolved quality of the incomplete understanding. That space is the practical gift of the settling. The second thing the realization produces is a reframe. The specific mental goes back and changes the reading quality of new context being applied to prior events, where you hold what you already knew in the light of what you now know, and the combination produces something different from what either produced alone. This reframe is not always comfortable. Some of what it produces is the specific, slightly bittersweet quality of understanding that certain things you interpreted as indifference or withdrawal or lack of care were something else, were the managed exterior of a much larger interior, were the fear or the confusion or the not yet finding the form quality of someone who felt more than the behavior reflected. The bittersweet comes from understanding what was there while knowing that the understanding arrives after the fact, after the moment in which having it would have changed things while they were still in the process of being what they were. But even after the fact, understanding is better than the absence of it. The bittersweet is real, and so is the greater accuracy of the picture. I want to speak to something about who you were during the events that is now visible through the realization. You were more seen than you knew. This is the specific, quietly significant thing that I want to make sure you receive clearly. Whatever the experience was that is being reconsidered through the realization, whatever the chapter or the relationship or the specific significant period of your life that is about to be understood more completely, during that period, you were being paid attention to more than the behavior of the person suggested, more than the quality of what they were expressing externally communicated. In the interior that you are about to learn more about, in the specific private landscape of what they were experiencing that they were not sharing, you were present. Significantly, with an importance that their behavior did not fully communicate. The realization is partly the revelation of that importance, of how much you occupied their interior during a time when you may have had reason to wonder whether you occupied it at all, of how much your presence mattered in a period when the quality of the engagement did not always reflect how much you mattered more than you knew. The realization is, among other things, the finding out. I want to give this one more specific dimension before we move to what comes next. The finding out has a particular quality when it arrives, about a period during which you had reason to doubt your own significance to someone. It has the quality of retroactive confirmation. The specific, slightly delayed, arrives after the fact quality of having something confirmed that you needed confirmation of during the period of its occurrence, and that could not be confirmed then because the interior that contained the confirmation was not yet being shared. Of understanding now what would have been helpful to understand then. Of the specific, slightly poignant, this would have changed things quality of information arriving on the other side of the moment it was most needed. But arriving, and the arriving even after the fact matters, because it changes not only how the past is understood, but how you carry yourself forward from the understanding. Because knowing that you mattered in a way that was not communicated at the time corrects something in how you have been interpreting that period, something that may have been quietly informing subsequent choices, subsequent evaluations of what you deserve and what you should expect, and what it means when someone's behavior does not reflect the full size of what you bring. The correction is the gift. even after the fact, even across whatever distance of time separates the moment of the experience from the moment of its fuller understanding. The gift arrives and it lands. Let me speak to what comes after the realization in terms of the dynamic itself, because the realization does not exist in a vacuum. It has consequences for the living current relationship to whoever or whatever this situation involves. It creates a new foundation. The specific, more accurate, now both people have the fuller picture quality of a situation that has been revised by the introduction of what was missing, where the navigation of what exists between you is no longer happening from incomplete information on one or both sides, where the dynamic can be what it actually is rather than what the incomplete version of events was producing. This does not guarantee a particular outcome. The new foundation does not automatically produce the specific outcome that either of you might want. It simply makes possible a quality of honesty and directness and engagement with what is actually there that the incomplete version was preventing. You cannot engage fully with something you do not fully understand. The realization is the fuller understanding. And what becomes possible in the fuller understanding is the fuller engagement. What you do with that fuller engagement is your choice made finally from the complete picture. As we close, I want to give you one image, a photograph of something that you have been looking at for a period of time, that you have been studying, that you know well in the form in which you have had access to it. That has produced the specific, thorough, this is what I see quality of long familiarity. And then someone hands you a piece of the photograph that you did not have, not a new photograph, a piece of the original one, a section that was missing. That, when placed in the correct position, completes the image. That reveals something in the completed image that was not visible in the partial one. Not a different image, the same image, but complete. And in the completion, everything you already knew about it reads differently, has slightly different meaning, sits in slightly different relationship to everything else in the image. The piece is coming, the photograph is about to be complete. And the complete version, Virgo, is going to tell you something about yourself and about this experience and about the person who shared it with you that the partial version could not. Something true, something you needed, something that in the receiving changes everything, not just the past, the forward, because understanding what really happened in a chapter that mattered gives you something to bring to every chapter that follows. A more accurate picture of what you are capable of producing in the people you share significant experiences with, a more accurate understanding of what your presence means, a more accurate sense of what to look for and what to trust, and what it means when behavior does not reflect the full interior of the person producing it. The realization is not only about then, it is information for now. Use it.